Welcome back to episode 136 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name's Alex. I'm here as always with Adam.
Hello.
And Cam.
We're back, live on location.
Yeah, in the flesh.
And we're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Darn tootin'.
It's good to be back. Full squad.
Welcome to Ottawa, Adam.
Yeah, feels good, man. Feels good. I haven't even really set in yet, you know? I feel... Because I just got back Sunday night or whatever. What day is this?
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday? Yeah. Got back, Tuesday night and just sort of...
Yeah, because you got back to Ottawa and then went
Left.
away for the cottage weekend.
Yeah, didn't even... Went home, said hi to the cat, put my bag down, and left 2 minutes later. I was in my house for 2 minutes, and then we were in Quebec in Gatineau Park for 4 days there. So, yeah, and then I finally got back. Yeah, a lot of traveling, a lot of relaxing, So, yeah, pretty nice, man. But it feels good to be back. And I'm mostly excited about actually playing everything and anything I can qualify for this summer. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to pop off on these nerds. Fitting a ride, man. I'm going down to
A month away from gaming and you're just got the itch.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. Like, oh man, I couldn't do anything. I'd go over to my buddy's garage because he has a computer set up hooked up to his TV in there just to play Arena. He'd be like, hanging out with his girlfriend inside or something, and I'd just be in the garage just stealing stuff from his fridge out there and just playing Arena like once a week. I'd be like, hey, can I come over and just use all your stuff? 'Cause, yeah, I didn't have anything out there with me. I showed up to Alberta with a small backpack with nothing in it. I brought my weightlifting belt, my gym shoes. You know what I mean? That's all I brought. So nice to be back, and I'm going to. Yeah, I'm actually got a lot of stuff lined up. I'm going to the face-to-face team tournament on July 20th.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Where's that?
it's Toronto.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm playing with Hemsley
Sweet.
and LP.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Is that all modern or what is it?
it's Legacy Modern Standard.
Sweet.
They needed a third and asked me, and then I said no because I didn't want to pay money to travel. And then they said, and then LP's like, well, we're staying at Matt's and it's free. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go. and then you and I and Hemsley are going to
Going to SCG Richmond.
we're going to
in
Richmond for the
August,
team
yeah.
tournament. Yeah, we're actually going all over. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I'm-
going to be fun.
and I'm gonna probably spend the next 2 months just because I have the summer. You know what I mean? Just grinding Magic. You know where I'm gonna grind Magic?
Where?
At the Wizard Tower.
At the Wizard Tower. The owners of wizardtower.com, your source for Magic singles here in Canada. They have free shipping on orders over $15. Longtime sponsor of this podcast. Great content on mtgcanada.com. Check them out. wizardtower.com.
Yeah, great store, great people. The staff are lovely. I message them and harass them constantly for stuff, and they're just incredibly friendly every time, even though I know I'm being a pain in their ass. You know what I mean? Like, I'll message the manager. One of the managers' name is Ryan. I'll message him all the time at like late at night or so. You know what I mean? Like, hey, Ryan, can you just do this thing for me and pull this card?
He's
Or-
not even at work. Leave me alone.
yeah. Or like transfer. Yeah, I need you to do something for me. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then, yeah, no, they're just great. Yeah, the whole staff, they're just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Great store here in Ottawa. Really happy to have them as a sponsor of the cast.
Yeah, they got another MCQ coming up too.
August 10th. Modern MCQ.
Yeah, hopefully Standard's back to shape by then, but at least Modern's looking kind of wild. I mean, who knows? There might be.
I mean, there's arguments on. I think there's arguments against Modern being in shape right now, you could say. The Hogak Menace has been dominating online for a while now since Modern Horizons came out. And you could say quite a few people have been on the ban train for pretty much since it was
Modern
put out
players
there.
are always on the ban train, though.
That's true. I feel like the majority of Magic players are always on the ban train now. Whenever something appears to be doing well, I'm like, oh, this is too powerful. This needs to go, blah, blah, blah. Like, why don't you just let things flesh themselves out and instead of automatically hopping on the bandwagon,
Well, the last few times that people started calling for bans, things didn't really flesh themselves out. They actually should have been banned. Like people were calling for bans of Marvel, weren't they? Or they were calling for bans of like Saheeli Cat. Like they were calling for bans of.
All those cards got banned.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Is that like a lot of the time recently that people call for the bans of something, it probably should be, and it ends up getting banned. There's some outliers, like Faithless Looting doesn't need to go. It's a bit too aggressive, but like the really egregious ones that people call for bans on, they're not that wrong.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. What was it? The one we couldn't believe? Oh, was it Attune with Aether?
Yeah, Attune with Aether.
We were like, no way, this gets banned. You're all out of your minds.
Attune with Aether, Rogue Refiner, Biting the Dust.
Yeah, those two going where, I mean, I get the philosophy behind that, just like a blanket ban. They're trying to ban a mechanic, not cards. So I guess ban your like common enablers, but
I don't know. But with how Modern's been looking outside of Hogak and that whole Bridgevine deck, there's actually been a ton of hits from Modern Horizons. I saw a weird stat that it's had the most amount of cards in 5.0 deck dumps within the first, I don't know exactly what it is, within the first couple of weeks of release. There's been so many copies of Modern Horizons cards, 5.0ing leagues. A bunch of new archetypes have come out.
Oh, it's wild.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And I think with the one mistake being Hogak, the set as a whole has been a pretty big hit.
I think it's incredible, yeah. And I think people are still exploring. I mean, there's tons of options. I saw a stat somebody posted where they were talking about how it has so many played cards from Horizons showing up in 5.0 deck lists. It's just all over the place. It's one of the highest appearance rates.
And I actually really like this because they went for the plan of design where they pushed a lot of cards into playability because they wanted there to be a lot of hits, with only one mistake being the Hogak deck, which I think is totally fine because I'd rather them push the limit on a lot of cards and have one mistake than hold back and just have a whole set that the majority of it misses, right?
That's a really good point, actually. I didn't really think about it like that, and I think a lot of people probably don't think about it like that. That's a really sort of insightful way of thinking about design and the consequences of banning. You know what I mean? Because some of the problems in Standard before, when we were calling for bans, there was a power vacuum of a power, I don't know the right word. Yeah, just isolation in one color, right? Or one particular thing that, threats didn't die and there were no good answers. Whereas now, instead, just everything is pushed. Answers, enchantments, all these different themes, all these possibilities. And I think that's healthier because the kind of things we're talking about that where there were all these calls for bans in Standard were because there was only one good deck. And it just nerfed everything else. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Except for Marvel, which people just hated because it was obnoxious, right? But
yeah, that was more of a feel-bad thing. But I'll totally just sacrifice Hogak for the good of the format when Modern Horizons overall has been fantastic. And the format looks really amazing. It's been really interesting to watch on Moto. People who have been streaming it, I mentioned in the pre-show, I've been watching way more Modern streams than Standard recently.
So was I when I was home, which is crazy to think about because it's no secret. I mean, somebody even called us out on Twitter once.
Yeah, we are not known to be lovers of Modern.
Yeah, we're not the biggest Modern fans, but I do, and I have loved it on occasion. You know what I mean? It's one of those like former jilted lovers that occasionally you go back to when you shouldn't.
Yeah. It's definitely had its moments of greatness and its moments of absolute trash.
Yeah, there were times I loved it. It was my favorite format. It comes and goes. It goes in waves. As they say, Standard is cyclical. I guess Modern is too. But no, it's been really good lately. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Mm-hmm. Whereas maybe this is a good segue for talking about something I'm not sure how I felt about watching, which was
the Mythic Championship.
Yeah, so I caught up on it late Sunday night, and yesterday I caught up on most of it. I fast forward through all the commercials, kind of thing, and you can get through a tournament with this. It didn't have many rounds actually, So.
Yeah, and with how fast the rounds were going by because the games were played on Arena, it was actually pretty easy to get through most of it relatively quickly.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, like I was able to fire through all of day one, maybe a third of day two, and I'm halfway through the finals right now.
Yeah, I just watched like half of day one and then the top four because I started watching it yesterday because I knew we were recording today.
The production value of the event was fantastic. It was really cool for them to continue on with the strategy they went with for the Mythic Invitational. And we had some good commentary, some bad commentary. little mix of both. Cedric Phillips, 10 out of 10. Love that guy. Really excited to see him commentating on Mythic Championships now.
Yeah, he did a great job.
We also got to see highlights from games, which was really cool. Time-shifted matches. Everything was really smooth. I can't really say much more about how good the coverage was from that point of view.
Yeah, the technical aspects of coverage, the like lack of downtime, the constant feed of games was great. But the games themselves and the format that they were in, it's part of the reason that I only watch half of day one is that I realized that like nothing really new or exciting was happening in these matchups. There weren't decks or archetypes that I wasn't familiar with. And so I felt fine skipping the rest of day one because like I've seen these similar standard matches so many times. The format's really settled into kind of its last stage. And the minor changes in the decks don't really add enough to gameplay to change the viewing experience that much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of to be expected, though, with how far into the standard format we are now and with how fast the formats get fleshed out these days with Arena and just this age of information, I guess you could say that we're in.
Yeah, it happens in every format, but for reasons that we've discussed on the podcast in the past, I think it's particularly bad in this one. Teamer Energy mirrors are super interesting to watch. One like came up on my YouTube recommendations from some old, the U.S. Nationals Championship from when it was Jerry Thompson playing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Blue Black Scarab God versus Teamer Energy. And that matchup was interesting. I ended up watching that whole video because like all their choices mattered, like how Jerry used his energy mattered, like when Oliver Tomiko chose to deploy Scarab God, when he chose to hold up mana, how he prioritized Gearhulks. That was all interesting. But in these matchups, like I'm watching an Esper Hero mirror and one person plays Hero and the other person has one removal spell and so they lose. Or neither person plays a hero early and then someone draws a Command the Dreadhorde first and commentary goes, that's a good card in this matchup, and then they cast it and the game just snowballs out of control from there.
Yeah, I think Kai Buddha actually said it well in one of his interviews that the mirror matches in this format usually just come down to which player draws one more big spell than the other.
Yeah, it's really sort of pressure, tempo, a dreaded word, a banned word. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's all about snowballing and accruing advantage in the hero matchups. And once they have it, it feels like there's just no way to come back. Mm-hmm. You sort of just add one piece, and if those pieces get to stick, it just spirals out of control. I really hate Planeswalkers, man.
But even in other matchups, I distinctly remember watching, I think it was a top 4 match. It was Shahar Shanhar playing mono red against somebody. And I think it was an Esper Hero. And the Esper Hero had kind of stabilized, picked up some stuff, gained some life. They were like 18, and Shahar had 6 or 7 lands and nothing really on board. And commentary said for multiple turns as Shahar drew and bricked that like Shahar needs to find Frenzy here to have a chance. If he finds a Frenzy, he can probably cobble together a win. If he doesn't, he won't. And so just the way that Esper snowballs and the way that it card stabilize and the types of card advantage in mono red, that entire game devolved to let's flip over the top 3 and see who wins. Which like when games get to a point that 47 cards in your deck don't matter and are dead draws, and even like you have no options that matter with any of those cards, like it removes a lot of interesting gameplay. Like it's not super exciting.
But it was really cool to see one of the challengers from the MCQ weekend coming from Arena to take down the whole event.
Yeah, it's wild. And with Simic Nexus of all decks.
Yeah,
a deck we were down on.
Taking it down with Simic Nexus, just absolutely stomping through a really tough tournament.
Shows what we know.
I mean, yeah, we weren't really high on Simic Nexus going into this tournament, and only 3 people brought it to the tournament. 2 of them got absolutely smashed on day 1, and then Matthias just completely crushed all the way through. His deck list, it's pretty interesting because it looks really similar to a lot of the deck lists we saw in week 1 of the format. The main differences being those decks didn't have Narset and Nissa in the main deck. Everything else is almost identical. And then we still see the creature plan of Biogenic Ooze in the sideboard, but what's new is having Paradise Druid to ramp them out faster, whereas before we used to see a Boreal Grazer, which is pretty mediocre.
Yuck.
You could say.
Can I get a big yuck on that card? Even during the days when it blocked Thief of Sanity, still yuck. Rest in peace to that card. When's that card going to make a comeback, right? Next weekend?
Arboreal Grazer.
No, Thief.
Oh,
The Insanity?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That card has to make a comeback.
I don't know if there's time left in the format for it to come back.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't tell.
Is there any like major event? Is there any reason to put effort into deck lists and Senate anymore?
I mean, it fell out of favor because of how good Mono Red has been consistently performing. And Mono Red, it fell out of favor a little bit, but now after its top 4 performance here,
It's
this
not
weekend,
gonna stop,
it-
yeah.
Yeah. It won the Toronto MCQ, I think 2 weekends ago as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's still here.
Who won it?
I can't remember the guy's name,
Hmm.
but the deck's still good.
Yeah. Yeah, Thief used to be such a beating for the Simic Nexus deck, but now it's none of the Esper decks are playing it. So not even out of the board, though. That's, you know what I mean? I'm surprised by that, but yeah, that's what I mean. I wonder when it's going to make a comeback. But yeah, there's things that I'm surprised this deck won. I think his draws were very, very good in the games I watched.
Yeah.
It was very close to losing at certain points in the tournament and managed not to.
Well, it was absolutely nuts that he got past Mono Red in the top 4.
Yeah,
All coverage was talking about was how horrible of a matchup that was for him.
it is.
And then he stole game 1 after Shahar having a pretty good start.
Yeah, I know. I saw. Yeah,
And then won game 2, and then Shahar just had a pretty bad draw in game 3. And Leverado's draw was pretty average, but
pretty average for Simic Nexus. Though,
Yeah.
they kill you on turn 5.
exactly. And with no pressure coming out of the Mono Red deck, he was able to steal it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I kind of said this from way back even that I thought the Mono Red matchup wasn't as hard as everyone said it was.
Yeah.
Like I always thought that. I don't think that was the issue for the deck. So
Well, what was?
I think like the Mono White's way worse when they played Blue and Teferi. Like when the meta turned into that, where people were just Teferi 3ing you out of Azorius aggro and then had Spell Pierces post board.
Yeah.
There was just nothing you could do. Also, Esper Hero can grind you out pretty hard if they're playing like D-Sparks and Teferis and Narsets. That can be really obnoxious. But Mono Red just does one thing. You know what I mean? If you can just board around and build your game plan around that one thing, like, you have a turn 2 Bond of Flourishing. I mean, ideally you have a turn 2 Growth Spiral and you just play a Wilderness Reclamation on 3 and
Yeah.
light them up. But
Steal it from there.
yeah, you can steal it from there. But I mean, you don't need much for it to sort of line up that you have a reasonable plan. If you just play a Paradise Druid and you have a blocker, like things like that, like they aren't always that fast.
I'm not surprised that like it's a common perception that the Mono Red matchup is very bad for Simic Nexus, because when you lose games, you did actually nothing.
Yeah, you just did nothing and died.
But that's like just how I don't know what the actual stats are, but that's how the matchup plays out. You either do nothing and die, or you almost die and then do everything and win.
Yeah, and I think that skews people's understanding of the matchup because I don't know. I won a lot. A friend of mine also made it to Mythic playing a now also long forgotten deck, the Rug sort of ramp decks with Wilderness Reclamation and like Niv Mizzet.
Okay.
A friend of mine made it to Mythic a bit ago with that, and I was like, "How's your Mono Red matchup?" He's like, "I don't know, it's terrible. Like it seems terrible, but you just sort of blink of an eye and bounce stuff and just buy time." And then Root Snares actually do come in handy for Simic Nexus sometimes, where they just don't draw a triple Wizard's Lightning and 9 you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's how they kill you, right? Is they have like a get to Lava Runner and they triple Wizard Lightning you, and you're like, yeah, nothing I could do. But there's times where they just have all creatures and you draw like 2 Root Snares and a Tameo and you just loop them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can definitely do it. You need to be on the play for game 1.
Which he was in the top 4.
Yeah, if you're not on play, you're dead.
Yeah.
You just can't win the match both games on the draw. I think that's what it comes down to as Simic Nexus. But if you're on the play and you have, turn 2 Growth Spiral, and then you can just start, Blink of an Eye or Root Snaring some damage early, that you can take the time while still playing a Search for Azcanta and leaving up Root Snare, for example, on turn 3 after a Growth Spiral. Like there are ways that you can set things up that you can sort of play multiple spells a turn against red, and one of them being Root Snare to be able to survive. It's not as bad as people think. It's still bad. I'm not saying it's, a good matchup or even, average. I just think that it's not as extreme as coverage painted it. It's still very bad. I mean, it's bad enough that if you're on the draw twice, you lose.
Not
So
great.
that's still not,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, but it's a draw dependent matchup, you know? So you just pray to God you win the die roll. If I'm mono red and I'm in an MCQ or something like that, I'm no starting the last round draw if I'm a lock for top 8, just trying to play for seeding. Every other deck, probably not a huge deal. Although I find play draw and standard matters a lot right now. I don't know about you guys, but my experience has been because of what, like, this is sort of off topic, but I think it's actually pretty worth bringing up, is that I don't know if you're experienced playing this in the Esper Hero. You played it at an SCG. I've played it online a bunch. That if you're on the draw in the mirror, it feels so miserable.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like you just auto lose almost.
Yep. Like, if both people have reasonable hands, you like almost can't win on the draw. Like, the difference between them playing a hero and then you play your hero on 2, and then they get to kill yours and make a token before you have a chance to kill theirs. So then you're obligated to kill theirs, but then they're always like a step ahead of you in proactively developing threats. Like, it's really bad. Or like, if you're on the draw, they have more removal spells that can kill your hero before you get a token, because now their Oath of Kaias are viable answers where yours are not. It's really swingy.
Yeah, I haven't played too much Esper Hero, but I can totally see that.
Or even just things like if you both play hero, and then even if they Teferi Time Raveler and bounce your hero, they now have a token in a hero. So if you play your Teferi and bounce theirs, they have a token that kills your Teferi, and they have a Teferi left over. Like, the fact that just having hero a turn earlier and making even one token changes so much of the matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or if you just take your time off to, you Tyrant Scorn theirs on turn 2, and then they just play Teferi or Narset. And now they're already accruing advantage that you can't catch up with. You're always a turn behind.
Yeah.
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 I think mono red mirrors, you want to be on the draw, though.
You think so?
Yeah, you're just killing.
Because you're just trading cards.
Yeah. You kill all the creatures and hope that they don't draw a Chandra, because that'll kill you while you kill it.
But I think with White Weenie in the mirror, you don't. You want to be on the play because you want an elephant and then be able to attack for lethal. And then they can't tap out to elephant. Like, they can't tap all their blockers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think in the mirror, in the White Weenie mirror, someone who's a White Weenie aficionado would have to let me know. Somebody who got second place at the first DWC organizational played it, so maybe they can let me know, or any of the listeners. But I feel like, yeah, that's the case. I'll be back around on Discord now so people can actually chat with me. I've just been out of it. But yeah, but in Esper Control, I think you want to be on the play too, even. I don't think the extra card matters. Just playing the Planeswalkers early matters, right?
Yeah. I see what you're saying with the mono red mirror, but your cards like Runaway Steamcan are a lot better on the play. Where on the draw, they just die to a Chain Whirler.
Yeah,
Which
but I
is
feel like they
awkward.
just get shocked anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I feel like literally everything just dies in the mono red mirror. Like, it's actually just a 1-for-1 until something is left standing.
Yeah, I played it a bit on Arena. I was just sort of jamming mono red for a while. And yeah, you like lose that matchup in increments of 2s and 3s from creatures that happen to stick around for a turn. But everything else just dies.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, rounding out this top 4, aside from Simic Nexus and mono red, we had 2 Esper Hero decks. Brad Nelson, Kai Buddha, best standard player in the world, plus the best Magic player ever.
Well, he's up there. He is legit up there.
I mean, no one's come close to winning 7 Pro Tours, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going based
On
on
PT
championship,
wins?
yeah, no one will ever touch that. I don't think.
Yeah, maybe. Depends what PV does.
How many does he have?
4 or 5.
Wins?
Oh, wins? I don't know. Oh, no, he has like 7 top 8s or something.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'm-
more, actually. I'm way off here. I think he has like 10.
I'm talking wins.
Yeah,
though.
wins, though. No one's
Wins
catching
he has, I think,
1 or 2.
1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah. But well, hold on. Yeah, top 8s. Doesn't PV have like 10 or 11?
He has some, that sounds high, but he
It's
has
somewhere
a
around.
lot.
It's a lot.
Mhm.
And he also has the best conversion rate, doesn't he? Isn't it something like 22% of Pro Tours he plays, he top 8s? It's like ludicrous.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
I
not
remember
sure.
looking at it one time and I was like, that's like, you know what I mean? Because they show other people's stats and someone had like 100 Grand Prix played, 2 top 8s. You know, it's like, geez, that's nuts. If I played 100 Grand Prix, I'd be so mad if I, you know what I mean? Well, you'd expect, actually, I wouldn't be mad. I would expect that top 8 1 or 2 of them along the way.
You would hope.
Yeah, you definitely would. Playing 100 Grand Prix, you know what I mean? By then, you have so much practice that it's just a mobility issue.
Yeah.
You're
I
gonna-
want to see the rest of those stats, though. I want to know if they rolled insanely high. Like, out of those 100, how many times did they day two? If they only day two'd like 30, then they just rolled really high on those two they top eight.
Yeah. But yeah, they usually show those people's stats, right? Like played 60 Pro Tours, top eight's 1, you know what I mean? And then I think PV's like, 50 Pro Tours, top eight or 10, Anyway, off topic. But yeah, no one's catching Kai.
No. But he was one of the discretionary invites for this tournament and made it all the way to top 4, which was awesome.
Just playing BBD's list.
Yeah. Well, yeah, his deck list was the exact same as Brad Nelson's and BBD's, aside from one difference. BBD and Brad Nelson played a Mortify in the main deck, and Kai played an Ugin in the main deck.
I like the Mortify more, honestly.
It's the only difference. I think it in the mirror match specifically, I'd want Kai's deck.
I'd want the Ugin in the mirror.
Yeah.
100%. But against the field, I want the Mortify.
Yeah, exactly. So Esper Hero had the best top 4 conversion rate out of every deck in the field. But when you look at it from top 16, we have all the top 16 decks listed out here. I mean, the deck with the best conversion rate was Simic Ramp, with 100% of that deck making day 2.
I mean, that's the one we thought would do well.
Which was a deck we thought would make it all the way.
I was hoping to take the whole thing, but I didn't even know what his deck list was at the time. It was Simon Gertzen, right?
Yeah. So he ended up, his version was a little different than the deck we talked about last week, where he wasn't playing mass manipulation in the main deck. But aside from that, it was pretty close.
Yeah. He was playing Blink of an Eye, which I don't know. I'd have to play it. I have played versions with Blink, and I was not impressed with it, but maybe this build is better. I do like his inclusion of Blast Zone, though, which you don't normally see in the Simic Ramp decks, because they usually play mass manipulation main, and so you can't afford to play colorless lands because you need, your mono green deck splashing 4 blue for mass manipulation in your main deck. So if he's not playing mass manip main, having the blast zones is pretty good. It buys you a lot of time against problem decks. I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, his deck was playing Nexus of Fate as well, which the list we looked at last week wasn't.
Yeah, you see it sometimes. I still play it in the version I've been playing. I play basically very similar to what he's currently playing in this list. Almost the same thing, but I'm playing 3 Nexus, and then I still have, and I only have 2 mass manipulation main. But just hybrids of these types of, green blue lists are there's all types of changes people make, but the kind of common must-haves are Fornissa, I think. That's the one card. Fornissa and Hydroid Crisis are the cards that you can't leave home without, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, looking at the rest of this this top 16, 1 out of 3 Simic Nexus decks made it into day 2. One of them, the one that made it, ended up taking down the whole thing. None of the Bant Ramp decks who played in day 1 made it into day 2.
And there was like 8 of them, wasn't there?
There was a lot, yeah.
It was like the 3rd most played deck.
I think it was 4th, because the third, it went Esper Control, Esper Hero, Izzet Phoenix, Bant Ramp, in that order.
Those 2 had a rough weekend.
Yeah.
The 3rd and 4th ones? Oof.
Yeah, none of the only Bant Ramp deck in day 2 was played by Ken Yukihiro, who was seeded in because he won his MPL.
Because he's a god.
Only 1 Izzet Phoenix deck made it into day 2. Out of the 3 Esper Hero decks, 2 of them were seeded in, and only 1 of them made it from day 1.
See, that's interesting that there's 2 Esper Hero in the top 4 even, but in the field, they didn't do great. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just once they got to the top 16, yeah, sure, it was fine, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, notably, their build of the deck had the best performance because, I mean, Brad Nelson, BBD, Kai Buddha, and then Seth Manfield all played the same deck.
Yeah.
So Seth being the only one who didn't make day 2, obviously BBD and Brad Nelson were seeded in. So that's
yeah, it skews the numbers
a little skewed. But Brad Nelson making top 4 as well as Kai Buddha. So their build was good.
Yeah.
They had a good take on the deck for sure. It was interesting to see a lot of 2 mono red decks make top 16. It was a deck we were pretty down on. I think there was 5 copies in the tournament.
It was a deck we were down on because the lists for Esper Hero and Esper Control that we had been looking at had a lot of Basilica Bellhaunts. Mm-hmm. And the sort of flavor of Esper Hero that seemed popular was Elite Guard Mage and not Bellhaunt. And Mono Red, while that's annoying, they can kill it easily. So they probably have an easier matchup against Hero than we were expecting. And if like with the other decks that sort of seemed to prey on mono red were Bant Ramp with all these white cards in order to combat aggressive strategies.
Yeah.
If those got hated out by the slew of Esper decks sort of early in the tournament, then mono red can kind of pick its way through the rest.
Yeah. Esper Control had a decent conversion rate as 4 out of the 12 decks in day 1 made it to day 2. None of them ended up being able to push into the top 4, but still the deck had an all right weekend for sure. The white weenie decks, two of them were red-white, which we said was our preferred version of the deck going into the weekend. One of them was seeded into day 2, and then the other 2 white weenie decks made it in. So white weenie had a pretty good conversion rate as well.
Yeah, that's a deck that I think we all agreed that it would have a okay weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Is well positioned to have a good weekend.
Yeah, definitely. It was pretty interesting to see which players made the top 16 as well, because I know there was a lot of drama going into the tournament about the discretionary invites and did people deserve it, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, out of all the discretionary invites, the 2 players who made the top 16 were Raf Levy and Kai Budde, arguably best Magic player of all time. And then Raf Levy has played in every single Pro Tour. He's Hall of Famer. 2 incredible players.
Yeah.
Out of the challengers from the MCQ weekend on Arena as well, Simon Gertzen making day 2, Pro Tour champion, former caster. And then Matthias Leverato taking down the whole tournament. That was really awesome to see.
Yeah.
Then everyone else was just MPL players.
Yeah.
Just crushing like I think most people expected them to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the meta game ended up shaping out kind of how we expected
Yeah.
from day 1 to day 2.
I feel like Standard's kind of done at this point. Just sort of waiting for M20 and see what things shake things up, right? We'll do our M20 spoilers next week.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so fast, man.
It was. With Modern Horizons, War of the Spark, it was all kind of just jammed together. Just a nonstop spoiler season, you could say.
Ugh.
You love to see.
Can we let the product placement just stop taking over my life for 1 minute, please? Can I just have respite from this grueling marketplace?
In the year of our Lord Savior 2019?
Just
I don't think
please,
so.
man, stop merchandising to me for 1 minute. No, it's fine.
You aren't excited about whatever like straight to legacy set they're going to market 2 weeks after core set releases?
Yeah,
Straight to legacy.
yeah. Eternal Masters 17.
Eternal Horizons 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do get a bit of a break, though, after Core 2020, because the next set doesn't come out till beginning of October.
Yeah, you end of September, beginning of October. That's always the rotation weekend. That's actually nice to get a break for a few months of what, you know what I mean? I'm actually looking forward to the lull state that Magic enters in, August, early September. There's like a particular lull state in Standard every year, and I kind of always like that. It feels like a break from everything where it just, it seems like a deluge of information and cards. So it's kind of nice to get a break. And then also rotation's happening. And I'm already excited for rotation.
Mm-hmm. I sold a bunch of my cards that are going to rotate in that buy list I mentioned.
Yeah.
And turn them into modern cards.
Yeah. Turning lead into gold or whatever.
Yeah.
The old wizard tower. The philosopher's stone. Is that what they turn into gold, right? Lead?
Yeah.
All right. Nailed it.
That's the typical one that people try and turn into gold. I guess you could turn other more precious things into gold, but then you're kind of a dumb alchemist.
Master of alchemy.
To wrap up the Mythic Championship, I think it was a great first Pro Tour for MTG Arena.
So I think the arena section was awesome. Big fan of the pyrotechnics. Big fan of people walking out like, yeah, like that was sweet. Like that, like the whole stage setup, thought that was cool. Hated the coverage work. I thought the coverage quality was atrocious for the most part. The introduction and interviews were so awkward and weird. But that's probably just Magic players, actually, not coverage's fault. It's hard to say. It's probably a little column A, a little column B, because they're learning. Like I'm totally understand that. I also kind of like that it was like goofy and like at one point. Okay, so I couldn't help but laugh at this. And I wonder if anyone else did. When they introduced the Vivian Arcbow card, the spoiler. Did you watch that part?
No, I didn't.
I didn't see it.
So they were like, we're gonna introduce this brand new card, and Day 9's all excited because Day 9's like adorable,
Yeah.
like I kind of like him actually.
Yeah.
And Anyway, when they went to introduce Vivian Arcbow Ranger, they like dropped sick beats like as they like came on the screen, and there was this really loud music playing as they were like, oh yeah, and then it does this. And the whole time there was just music playing very loudly. Like as a like to hype up, you know what I mean? It's like hype music for when they spoiled the card. It was
That's awesome.
dude,
Come on.
it was so ludicrous that I was like, you know, I kind of like this. Like it's so dumb and
Yeah.
silly that it was like going to pro wrestling, you know what I mean? Like like Japanese pro wrestling too, where it's like hilarious and campy and funny and not like, you know, lame American one, like NA or trash wrestling. But yeah, no, it was like really hilarious. So, but they got some, you know, baby steps. They got some work to do on the coverage, but the arena section, yeah, like you said, was sweet.
It was mostly sweet. The only thing I don't understand, like coverage, whatever, it was pretty typical for coverage. The only thing I don't understand is that they clearly had a separate version of Arena with sort of a different game board for this tournament. And yet, for whatever reason, they couldn't take the time to like make Legion Warboss stops work or Wilderness Reclamation stops work. And they had players verbally announce, like, I'm going to be casting a Warboss. So, like, you know, get your APM on, set your stop.
Yeah.
Like, you already made a special version of the client. It's literally 2 cards that you're requesting people announce verbally. You can't just hard program in like stop if this is on the board. Like,
I don't know. It's probably very easy, but
yeah, who knows?
small indie company.
Yeah. They're too
I don't
busy
know.
cooking up Eternal Horizons.
Yeah, there was one awkward point in day one where someone cast a Legion Warboss without announcing it on camera, and then a token got made. And then the fix for it was the judge was like, okay, so you can't attack with it this turn or next turn. And then the game just continues as normal. And then the other player was like, well, this could still change the entire like how the game plays out,
Yeah,
because
the
they still
token's
have
still
the
there,
one
yeah.
and they shouldn't because I have removal. I'm like, yeah, this is the fix we got to do. And she's like, well, I have to attack with it this turn because that's what Legion Warboss says. And they're like, okay, you can attack with it this turn, and then next turn you can't attack with it at all. And that it was just so horrible and cringy. Just
Yeah, that seems like I just don't understand what is easy and hard to change in the client. But
I don't know.
apparently it's really easy to add new cosmetics and sleeves, but not to add a stop.
I'm sure we'll get a fix on it at some point, but
Yeah, who knows?
it is what it is for now. Anyway, to move on, we want to jump off standard a little bit and talk a bit about Modern Horizons, as this set has just been really killing it so far.
Dude, it's awesome.
Talk about some impactful cards from the set, talk about some deck lists, some stuff that has caught our interest, and go from there.
And in particular, we wanted to talk about, there's the obvious impactful cards, and so we didn't really want to directly talk about those, but we wanted to highlight some ways in which other decks have adopted cards from Modern Horizon to respond to the context of these sort of powerful strategies that exist now. It's kind of a topic we refer to as contextual deck building or contextually optimal deck building, like where, you know, in a vacuum, these cards are weaker than other options, but when you consider what you're going to be playing against, then they're a lot stronger and sort of how they interact with the format in general. And I think the first example that really jumped out to us of this was the inclusion of, what's it called, Aria Flame?
Aria Flame.
In Is It Phoenix as a replacement for Pyromancer's Ascension. So Aria Flame is from Modern Horizons. It's a 3-mana red enchantment, 2 and a red. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent gains 10 life. It's not really a good strategy. And then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put a counter on it, and it does damage equal to the number of counters on it to each opponent, target opponent. There's only one in real games of Magic, so
To target player or planeswalker.
target player or planeswalker.
Yeah.
So it gives them 10 life and then slowly chips away at their life. And so it's sort of an alternate win con, so you don't have to hit them with Thing in the Ice. You don't have to hit them with Arclight Phoenix. As you're cantripping and casting spells, this will start to kill them.
Yeah, it's an interesting card because the cards that a lot of people are packing to fight Hogak are the same cards that they can use to fight Art like Phoenix and the Pyromancer's Centric plan. So as a deck that does rely on its graveyard for part of its normal game plan, you're able to sidestep all the hate with a card like Aria Flame. And whereas if you were just playing Pyromancer's Ascension, that card's just straight up dead in a format with so much hate towards graveyards.
Yeah, like the graveyard hate that was popular like 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a lot of surgical extractions, which can shut off your Phoenixes, but your Pyromancer's Ascensions are still live. But now we're seeing decks with just 4 to 5 Leyline of the Void, depending on how spicy people want to be.
Yeah.
And against this, like, you can't have your plan B and plan B rely on the graveyard. So it's interesting that they found something else that sort of plays a similar role of allowing your spells to be win cons that sidesteps all this hate that it's running around now because of Hogak.
Yeah. It's been really interesting to see how people have adjusted their graveyard hate as well. Whereas most of the Bridgevine decks we've been seeing now have either been playing for Nature's Claim or for Wismare in their sideboards as a way to fight Leyline of the Void, which is a card that a lot of people automatically jump to as, a turn 0 play to completely shut down Hogak. Also, these cards take down Rest in Peace as well. But the funny thing about Rest in Peace is it's not always fast enough if you're on the draw.
Yep.
Where you could be facing down 20 power on turn 2, and then you're just dead. Your Rest in Peace has done nothing. But a lot of the decks now, like Is It Phoenix, have moved away from Leyline of the Void towards Ravenous Trap as it gets around the counterplay from the Hogak Bridgevine deck. And it just allows you to completely wipe a graveyard without having to place any permanents on the board.
Yeah.
And you've seen, Ravenous Trap has jumped up a bit in price, and I've seen a lot more decks utilizing that card instead of Leyline, just because of how Bridgevine is prepared to fight that sort of graveyard hate.
Yeah, it's so interesting how much Modern Horizons has forced sort of these meta shifts, not archetype shifts. Like, you know what I mean? There hasn't been just a complete brand new archetype. I thought if anything was going to, it'd be Ren and 6 would make a whole entire new archetype. But you know what I mean? It would build a new deck basically around itself. But what has happened is everybody's just sort of had to adjust completely how they're playing and their style, even in their main deck. Like the Aria Flame one, I just think is so sweet. Like it's such a cool change, an adaptation that keeps Phoenix alive, but just sort of completely has to change this card. And it's not as sort of optimal or as powerful as a Goldfish card, right? Like you'd rather have other cards, but you have to react to the meta. And I think that's just such a cool thing that Modern Horizons is doing, and by changing things, but in a sort of safe way, and sort of apart from Hogak, maybe. I mean, we'll see if they ban it. I think they should let it ride for a while, but that's me.
That was kind of the sense I got from looking at Modern Horizon spoilers, though, is like, yes, they pushed a lot of powerful cards, but all of the powerful cards are really narrow in either, narrow in their use or narrow in sort of what decks want to include them. And so I think it's hard for really, really narrow cards to build archetypes around them, but it's very easy for them to slot into existing archetypes. Like we saw Jund doing well, and it won the
modern MCQ.
The modern MCQ on Moto, right?
Yeah.
And it's featuring, a bunch of ley lines in its sideboard because it has to, but also it's got Collector Roof in its sideboard, which is another card that we thought would see play and, sort of bump these fair strategies up as giving them more options to attack more things.
Yeah.
And then this deck that we thought just a couple weeks ago, Jund had no chance. It was like the joke of the format. Here it is winning an event.
Yeah, picking up some interesting cards aside from Collector Roof in the sideboard, but also playing a 1 of Unearth in the main deck, which is kind of sweet tech. Seasoned Pyromancer, which was one of our cards on our top 10, very high up in our top 10. And then I believe our number 2 card was Ren and 6. We see 2 copies of this card in the main deck of Jund. Ren and 6 just does so much. And it's a lot of people I've been comparing it to Deathrite Shaman. Maybe not quite on that same power level, but still an incredibly powerful card. It's really interesting to see Jund succeeding in the Hogak Bridgevine world we live in right now. As you would think you're just fighting fair as Jund.
Yeah, if you told me you're going to play this, I'd be like, yeah, okay. I don't know why you're just intentionally choosing to lose here, but okay,
Yeah. I just don't know.
Yeah, and like coming at it from the point of view of like this topic that we're discussing, there's nothing that jumps out to me as like really having, outside of the 4 ley lines in the sideboard, there's nothing that's like obviously an inclusion contextual to the meta. There's just sort of cards that are strong that made its way in.
Yeah.
Which I guess is just, that's the Jund, that's how you build Jund, so.
That's Jund life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? I don't have an answer for you here.
This one's a head scratcher.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a head scratcher for you, but hey, scavenging use every time. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Scavenging use, the god.
Second place in this tournament, not a head scratcher. Blue Eye Control has been doing very well
Extremely well.
for the past couple of weeks. Pretty good at fighting Hogak. You have lots of ways to interact with your opponent's graveyard. All of the Blue Eye Control lists I've been seeing recently have been playing a minimum of 2 Surgical Extraction in their main deck as well. Just kind of necessary in the world we live in
Yeah.
as it exists. But
Yeah,
not-
Blue White has lots of options. Extremely always has had the best sideboard tech in Modern, right? Are the blue and white colors. So
yeah, this deck didn't really pick up much from Modern Horizons aside from Force of Negation. But the real powerful pickups have been for War of the Spark and Narset to Fairy Time Raveler.
yeah.
But
Yeah, they're really good in this. I mean, they're even good against the, you can use them against the Hogak decks. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's pretty good there. Like you can get a lot of value out of them. So
yeah.
not the coolest deck though. What's the coolest deck now in Modern because of Unearth, which was on your guys' top 10 list?
Yeah. So one deck from this top 8, Esper Mentor.
I love this deck, man.
Monastery Mentor, not a card we really ever see outside of Legacy and Vintage, I guess, these days.
Yeah, no, not at all.
We haven't, it's never really got its time to shine in Modern, but now we've got this sweet deck 3 Unearth, 4 Monastery Mentor, Snapcaster Mage, Jace Vin's Prodigy.
JVP, not a card you see that often.
Dude, I love seeing JVP getting unearthed. That is awesome, man.
Yeah. Unearth really shining in this deck. Also playing Teferi Time Raveler. This deck just seems awesome to me.
There's got to be so many cool unearthed decks
Yeah.
that are just waiting to be unearthed.
Yeah. We're looking at specifically Stainerson's 7th place list from the Modern Premiere.
But why bring back 3 drops from your graveyard when you can bring back 8/8s?
Yeah, that's true.
True. That's right.
Yeah, I wonder how much these unearths are getting hurt, but at the same time, people are just waiting for but you can just cycle them if it goes bad. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Unearth is
They're
so
never dead.
good, man.
Unearth
'Cause-
on our top 10 as well.
I know, because I remember you guys talking about, wasn't it just, what's the other bad card that you can pay? The
Claim
swipe card?
Fame.
Claim.
Yeah, Claim Fame, because that card doesn't cycle. It's just so bad then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The fact that our cycles means it's keepable in hands that other would be unkeepable otherwise.
That's another interesting point is that, like, with all this graveyard running around, graveyard hate running around, if you want to play some sort of reanimator strategy, Unearth is sort of exactly what you're looking for because, again, it doesn't get completely shut off by Leyline of Void, etc.
Mhm.
You can always just cycle it. So it's kind of not super surprising that this is the sort of secondary graveyard strategy we're seeing in response to, ley lines everywhere and surgicals everywhere.
So yeah, there was a point on the show, and I can't remember now because I listened to it while I was traveling. There was a point on the show where somebody talked about Unearth and cycling, and did it really make that big of a difference? And I was thinking the whole time listening to the podcast when Hemsley was on, because he was talking about Ren and 6 and all these other things, and Life from the Loam is a card, and all I could think was, man, the fact that playing Unearths in your Life from the Loam deck protects your Life from the Loam from surgical is insane. Because you
Yeah.
go to surgical and you cycle in response and just pick up your Life from the Loam.
Mm-hmm.
That's like actually nuts, right?
Yeah, that's pretty
Playing
good.
Unearth, Life from the Loam, sort of grindy. I've been waiting for that deck. I don't know what that deck looks like. You know what I mean? Get back my Tireless Tracker or like my Plague Engineer that I milled over. It helps you find, or my Oof, right? That I found from like milling through with Life from the Loam. There's a lot of cards that sort of creatures, I mean, that you could put in the graveyard with just a fair, you know what I mean? Like Jund, but with dredge cards, like a fair. I don't know what that deck looks like yet, but you know what I mean? It makes me curious about this sort of fair, unearthed, grindy, interactive mid-range deck in Modern. I don't know if it's possible, but I mean, Jund won this tournament, so.
Yeah. I mean, when we initially talked about Ren and 6 on the podcast, we kind of expected it to form its own archetype around it, kind of on the same lines as you were saying, Life of the Loam, some kind of value lands engine to get the deck going. But seeing it just out of Jund is just a way to hit your land drop every single time.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is, I think that, so I don't think it's Jund. well, maybe it is because of the coloring, but I'm even curious about sort of green-black now playing like a Life from the Lone Wither on Earths and sort of just trying to grind out value because then it helps them find collector oofs. It helps them, you know what I mean? Like it can, green-black can start to, and then the reason I say this is because green-black has always been a land destruction deck, right? You can start Life from Loaming your Field of Ruins.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, there's lots of cool options. Like, yeah, you don't have Ren in 6, but I think Jun should play Ghost Quarter or something, which is obviously hard on its mana, but makes me interested with cards like Ren in 6. Yeah, super interesting options with sort of how we want to do things. But yeah, Modern's a wild place. But I think the green-black rock decks, which I've always been a fan of in Modern, should be playing on Earths and some sort of combination of package with them and sort of try and take advantage of it because it just reanimates every creature in their deck.
Yeah.
Besides Kalitas, the god, if they're playing it. But yeah, being able to get a Plague Engineer back or, you know, your Collector Roof on the board, all these utility creatures, you know, or you know what else would be cool? If you start playing it in, I don't know if they play it yet because I was traveling for a month, is the Devoted Druid decks. You know, the old company combo decks?
Yep.
The Abzan versions?
Yep.
Just unearthing hate bears and collected company into combo and unearthing. That's nuts.
Yeah, the Devoted Druid combo deck picked up a lot from the new set as well between Eladamri's Call, Giver of Runes. I've seen versions of deck playing Finale of Devastation.
Yeah, remember I was talking about that on the podcast like months ago. I was like, I don't understand how this card doesn't see Modern play. I think it's really good.
It has been.
But it wasn't when I was telling about it.
Yeah, Canadian Gold Pro Edgar Malgohaze has been playing that deck a lot on his stream. And it looks really good.
Yeah, I was saying, and me and Shane, you know the guy from here, him and I talk about Modern once in a while, and we were talking about Finale, and we just said like we don't understand how people aren't acknowledging how good this card is. It's just Green Sun Zenith.
That's not so surprising though, because like even cards that are obviously nuts in Modern, you need to recognize that it's nuts in Modern, and then not understand why people aren't playing it, and then give them about a month or two for Modern players to get around to changing their decks, and then it'll show up. That's just kind of the pace of Modern. Like a lot has changed recently with Modern Horizons, but if in general, like sort of the secondary obvious cards, it takes a while, especially when they're being added to old archetypes.
Yeah, the Devoted Druid combo deck is pretty interesting with its spot in the meta because I think you get to prey on the decks that are trying to fight Hogak a lot, as you're not seeing a lot of Lightning Bolt decks because they're not very good against Hogak, and Lightning Bolt decks being your worst matchup as Devoted Company. So it's in a weird little spot right now where it's really good while Hogak's around, but it might get significantly worse if Hogak disappears from the format. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Modern's just so up in the air, and with a potential ban in Restricted coming up and London Mulligan coming up, it's going to remain up in the air for a while, I think.
All right. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. Pre-orders on Core Set 2020 are up. Check them out, wizardtower.com. If you want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/DWC Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 or the Disorganized Wizards Club Podcast on Facebook. And however you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, any podcast app, leave a review, share the podcast with your friends. Everything helps bring the thing to new listeners. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week.
It's good to be back.
See ya.